Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you're located. My name is Asaf Ramarowski. I'm the Executive Director of ASMIA, and I am pleased to welcome you to yet another edition of our ASMIA webinars. This afternoon, here on the East Coast, we have the pleasure of hosting my friend and colleague, Professor David Menashri. Professor Menashri is a world-renowned expert on Iran. He is Professor Emeritus at Tel Aviv University and the founding director of the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University. He has been a prolific and an expert on this topic and well known around the world as far as dealing with Iran, Iran's history, and where Iran is going forward. Currently, he's working on a new book entitled Iran, the United States, and the Middle East, and is editing a book on Iranian Jews in Israel. Professor Menashri will deal with the current situation when it comes to Iran, specifically leading up to the upcoming Iranian elections on June 18th. And so we're looking forward to having a fruitful and a lively conversation. The format this afternoon, for those of you who've joined us in the past, know Professor Menashri will talk for about 25 minutes. Then we'll open up to the floor to as many questions as we have. All you have to do is type in your questions in the chat and we will read them. If there are any questions we don't get to, I apologize in advance, but we will do our best. If you write us afterwards, we will respond to them in a timely fashion. So without further ado, David, it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And the virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to be with you. And I'm glad that ASMIA and SPME have been somehow collaborating in such a wonderful way. Let me begin with a point which I think it's important to mention, although I think many people are aware of it. Iran is a very complex country. And it's not black and white. I know that sometimes you read, depends whom you read. There are angels and you read some other things, there are satans. It's a mixture of all kinds of things together. Iran has a lively civil society. I would say, in my view, in the Middle East is the most active civil society. In terms of publications, in terms of artistic work, in terms of divergent differences in opinions. On the other hand, you see much more suppressive powers in the country, not allowing people to breathe. I know there is somehow of conflict between what I say, but the two dimensions exist. So maybe to clarify what I mean about this complexity, Asaf knows it. A couple of years ago, I was notified that the book that I wrote in 1992 has been translated into Persian, and the initiative and the endorsement for the book was in cooperation with the Supreme Council of Cultural Revolution in Iran. This is the most probably extremist, radical, conservative institution in Iran. And of course, if you translate a book, you also praise the book, but they went beyond what I could imagine. Certainly, they deleted any sign that I'm an Israeli, but they knew I'm an Israeli. And then I went to read further when I got the book. By the way, it was the best book that I could have imagined writing, because it was very expensive in Iranian currency, but it was $4 a book in dollars, so I could buy some and give to my friends. I wrote the book was about Iranian education from the early years that students went to the West to study up to the Islamic Revolution, and then the publishers asked me to write a brief epilogue about education under the Islamic regime. And in this book, I write that the Islamic cultural revolution, and imagine they published the book, was a total failure. And they added an appendix, and they wrote that the author is right. We have failed not only in education, we failed in housing, in the commodities, and all other things. It's a long list of failures that they mentioned one by one. Then I went further and see whom they thank. And I was amazed to find out that they thank a lady that her father is probably the most known Ayatollah in Iran after Khamenei, and probably her husband is going to have a very important position shortly. So it's crazy, but they do it. They translate the book. They translate the book by friend and colleague, Professor Kohlberg from the Hebrew University, about the Shia. Imagine the Shia, the center of Shiite learning, translates a book by an Israeli professor. So they do things, they want to learn, they expand their knowledge, but it looks to the outside world as something bizarre. Having said so, let me again mention 3 points that I think are important to understand. I'll try to do it briefly. The first question is, we call this Islamic Revolution. Everything today is Islamic. Islamic Revolution, Islamic terrorism, Islamic Republic, Islamic Islam. What is Islamic in the roots of this revolution? Did the people who went to revolution in 1979, this was their dream to have an Islamic regime ruled by the Ayatollahs? I can promise you this was not the case. People went to the revolution like other countries who have gone to big revolutions in history, basically for 2 major desires: fighting for bread and liberty, for welfare and freedom, social justice and political justice. I was at Tehran University for 2 years, just before the revolution, doing studies on this book on education. And no one can tell me that the people were eager to replace the monarchy with this regime led by the Ayatollahs. If the dream was liberty and welfare, there is no better welfare for the poor people of Iran today than used to be under the Shah. There is no greater freedom today for the Iranian people, and we'll come to it later, that was under the Shah. Under the Shah, to speak or act against the regime was a crime. Today, to act and speak against the regime is a sin. I don't know which one of them is better. So please remember that we speak about Islamic Revolution in terms of its origins, roots, goals. It was much beyond what we in the West would call religious. In Islam, like in Judaism, there is no difference between religion and science, religion and politics. Everything is religious. So the religion, it was social, economic, political, international revolution. You can call it whatever you want, but this is what it was. The second question is, to what degree the ideology of this revolution was Islamic, what we know as traditional Islam. Well, it was not. And here also I'll give you one example. When Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, victorious through Paris, there have been 7 grand ayatollahs, the chief ayatollahs of Iran. None of them followed Khomeini's ideology. The chief, or the most learned ayatollah, Shiite, in Shiite world, Ayatollah Sistani of Iraq, who is Persian by origin, does not follow Khamenei. And the Ayatollah, the day groomed to be successor of Ayatollah Khomeini, was removed from grace and was under house arrest for 5 years until he passed away. So even within this Islamic world of thought, there are differences. In Shia, more so than the Sunni. And I don't have time to go into it. The third question is to what degree the policy of the Islamic regime of Iran is faithful to the ideology with which they came to power. And here again, like in any other revolution in history, unless you want to commit suicide, the regime becomes more realistic, more pragmatic in transition from opposition to power. They came to power, they said that nationalism is anti-Islamic. Their constitution says that the president of Iran must be Shiite of Iranian origin, born in Iran. So where is negation of nationalism? They say that there is no difference between Arabs, Persians, Turkmens, Kurds, and so on and so forth, but they insist to call the Persian Gulf the Persian Gulf. They fight Saddam Hussein because he is a secular pan-Arabist, secular and pan-Arabist, Baas, member of the Baas party. And guess what? The closest friend of Iran during these years of war between Iraq and Iran was another Baas, the Baas of Syria. And you see how they now help to promote and to strengthen Bashar al-Assad. We could have gone more and more, but the point is they deviate from dogma. If you want to go back to history, you can look at Stalin. It's kind of realism and pragmatism. But the point is that being pragmatic doesn't make you moderate. You just postponed for tactical reasons the implementation of your vision to better time. So this was the case during the first decade of the Islamic Revolution. And another point regarding to it, new regimes don't deviate from their philosophy, ideology voluntarily. They do it when they don't have a choice. For example, Ayatollah Khomeini said for 8 years that he will continue fighting Saddam Hussein until victory. And one day in July 88, he went to television speaking to the people and say, "It is sweeter for me to drink poison than signing an agreement with Saddam Hussein, but we don't have a choice." So you can see that Iranian policy is much more pragmatic, but I caution you not to view pragmatism as moderation or even reformism. When Ayatollah Khomeini was forced to go into the nuclear, Ayatollah Khamenei was forced to go into negotiation in 2013 for the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, he was faced with the same dilemma. He didn't have the choice, and he termed his policy as heroic flexibility. Heroic flexibility that in the West was viewed as moderation was not a moderation. Because in the same speech, Khamenei said, is like a boxer fighting another boxer on the stage, and for purpose of flexibility of caution, he goes one step back to come and punch his rival in the face. So that's, even this flexibility is not really moderation. So I say that they go to more pragmatism, but the question is, to what degree, in what field, in what rate, there are different attitudes. As I mentioned earlier, the young people of Iran, the graduates of universities, the civil society, women organizations that are wonderful. You don't fight other countries or many other countries who are fighting for women's rights and children's rights the way that the Iranians doing it. They fight, they go to jail, they come back and they continue fighting, or in many cases, they go to the United States or Canada or any other place outside the country. I mentioned something in one of my talks many years ago that about these newspapers in Iran under President Khatami. He was president 1997 to 2005. And I say that it is interesting to read the Persian newspapers at that time. There is a degree of openness. The lecture was to a group of our diplomats, ambassadors in Jerusalem, and one of them turned to me and said, how you can speak about even relative freedom of expression if in Iran, in the last 4 years, 100 liberal newspapers were closed down, shut down. I told him, show me another country in the Middle East which has 100 liberal newspapers to shut them down. So you can see that it doesn't mean that there is liberalism in Iran. There are impulses of openness. And of course, Khatami, in the last 10 years, since the Green Movement in 2009, 12 years, his pictures are not allowed to be shown in video, camera, television, newspapers. No former president of Iran has the right to compete for presidency against. Well, of course, if you run for 2 terms, you cannot continue. But after a while, you can come back and compete. Look at Ahmadinejad, look at Rafsanjani, look at the previous president of the Supreme Court, Ali Larijani, who was Speaker of Parliament until January this year, was disqualified to run for presidency. In one of the parliaments, say half of the members of sitting parliamentarians were disqualified. And one of the Iranian intellectuals from Iran asked, tell us, there are one or two ways. One is that you had a mistake approving them in the first place, or they become corrupted while in majlis, while in parliaments. So you can see that there are different tendencies, and some of the Iranians today speak up very nicely on many issues, including Israel. If there is a professor in university that his video became viral, that going into offices in Iran, you have to step on Israeli and American flags. And you could see this going beyond the flag, not to step on the American flag. And he went to this television station and he spoke, he said, who commissioned us to fight Israel? Is the Arab League asked us to do it? Is the Security Council asked us to do it? What is this with our problems? The government should feed the people. And in demonstrations that you could see in 2009, 2017, 18, 19, 20 even, until January, the slogans were, why should I care for Syria and Lebanon? My life is dedicated for Iran, Iran, Iran. So you can see these people who are wonderful, who have nice ideas, in my view, but the problem is they don't have the power. Power is in the hands of the other group. They may be smaller group in society. They may be not more than 20, 30% of the population, but they carry the power. So what makes them more so powerful? First, they speak in the name of God. You know, it's wonderful that you wake up in the morning and tell them what is the true will of God. How do they know what is the true will of God? You can ask them. In addition to the support of the Almighty, they have the strength of the military revolutionary guards and the arms in hand. So if you have the arms and you have the backing of God, what else do you need? Well, there is another thing. They need the will to fight for your power, even suppressing your people. And I'll give you a quote from a leading Ayatollah. While students were rioting and they were suppressed, he said that whoever thinks that Islam is religion of mercy does not understand what is Islam. Islam, he said, is religion that urges us to take a sharp sword and cut the tongues and heads of people who act or speak against us. When you have this determination, which is today more than ever, because what Khamenei cares today when it comes to the presidency, more than anything else, the main ideology remains is to maintain power, to keep the position of the supreme leader in place. And for doing so, they are willing to, they are capable of maintaining their power. Now, one of the other advantages that Iran has is that, how can I say this without offending my American friends? Their enemies are naive. And willingly or unwillingly, the greatest services to Iranian national interest have been provided by the West, led by the United States. In 1991, America led a coalition to destroy the power of Saddam Hussein, the enemy number one of Iran. In 2002, they went to the other border of Iran, to the east, to eliminate, or not eliminate, but to remove the Taliban in Afghanistan. In 2003, they came back to Iraq to remove Saddam Hussein. In 2009, for days and days, Iranians were struggling in the streets, the Green Movement, and the American president didn't say a word. I don't think he should embrace them, but at least tell them what he told Hosni Mubarak 2 years later. You must go now. In 2015, the nuclear deal was the best gift Iran received since the foundation of the Islamic Revolution. Another gift was 2018, when President Trump led this move to retreat from the nuclear deal. Not that nuclear deal was good, but I think that retreating from it without securing the additional steps to follow was not good. And 2021, today, you see the Americans seems to be begging the Iranians to come to the nuclear deal. And they look like they are doing a favor to the United States. You know, they meet in Vienna, the Iranians refuse to sit in one room with the American delegation. So what I see in this competition is I see what I call the strength of the Iranian weakness and the weakness of the Iranian strength, of the American strength. Iranians, they think that they now do everything. And by all these moves, reformists are weakened. Look at Zarif, the foreign minister. Look at Rouhani. They have been really smashed, powerless. And one thing you can do, there is a leaked video interview with Zarif, in which he speaks how much the president or foreign minister in Iran does not have power. He needs everything to get permission from the supreme leader. So I would also say that the policy of Israel also played to the hands of the Iranians. But this is, maybe we come to it in the question and answers. You are discussing, negotiating with sharks. The combination of cleric and bazaar merchants makes a good politician. You know, Iran is known for two things, mainly I think two things that are well known in the world. It is said that they invented chess, and they are weaving carpets. When you're weaving a carpet, you have to think about each dot. When you play chess, you have to look at the big picture. They are doing these two together. The other strength that they have, that we tend not to think about, is their education system, science, technology. Now, I don't want to be cynical and say that this is also contribution of the West. If you don't sell them, they produce and they learn. If we speak about the nuclear technology, Iran now has the nuclear. You cannot prevent Iran one time unless you invade the country to produce nuclear energy or for military. The know-how cannot be eliminated. What the Islamic regime has done, they made their rule and Islam as synonyms. We are the same. Whoever is against us is against Islam, is against Shiite. And people cannot breathe and have to somehow follow. Now we are coming, before we coming to the elections, I would say the president, I say, is powerless. It's not new. The first prime minister of Iran, Professor Bazargan, say that Khomeini gave him a knife without blade. All the presidents in Iran, as powerless as they somehow were against the supreme leader. So it means that even with this narrow circle of revolutionaries, there are different attitudes. None of the previous presidents can run for office in Iran because we are not speaking about elections. We are speaking about nomination or selection. 592 candidates applied to run for presidency. Only 7 of them have been found qualified, all but 2 of the more pragmatic, and the 2 are not well known in the country. All the leading pragmatic figures have been disqualified. And of course, they left one leading candidate on the extremist radical side, and which seems to have the best chances to win. The other powerful element in Iran that we have to remember all the time is the Revolutionary Guards. They have the military power, but it's not only military. They are the largest economic enterprise in the country. And I didn't mention Russia, and I didn't mention China, who are having the back of Iran. The majority of the people don't like the Iranian regional policy from Bab el-Mandab, from Yemen up to the Mediterranean. The reformists are still alive. Because of the educational system, because of the number of professionals that they have, they are not going anywhere. They will continue, and one day they will struggle. A leading professor wrote an article a year ago at the peak of the corona, and he said that the reform movement is dead, but because of the corona, we didn't arrange the religious ceremonies. Well, I happen to think that there is not a dead, and he himself said later, it's not dead. But the generation of the past reformists has passed. And there will be another generation. It may take time, but they will come and continue the struggle. With these elections to the presidency, I think what is important, in my view, the most important, when you see that the cloud of the leader is looming over the elections. Khamenei is 82. Sooner or later, there will be a day that he will have to leave the stage. What he is trying to do now is to put in place someone that he can trust, who will maintain his legacy in the future, and maybe even endorse his son to succeed him, or at least someone faithful to him. What we see in Iran today, the supreme leader is very conservative, radical, extremist, you call it as you wish. The parliament, for the first time, is the Speaker of Parliament is a former Revolutionary Guard commander. And now you have a president who is known to be ultra-Orthodox. You just Google the words, what verse is it will get you there? The Dead Committee in Iran, Dead Committee. In 1988, Ayatollah Khomeini thought that there are too many people sitting in jail. And he said that, you know, if they are guilty, execute them. If they are innocent, free them. And in few days, they executed 5,000 or between 4,000 and 5,000 people. So it's all of them have been already put in trial, found guilty, had a service to serve few years in jail. Some of them were about to be released in few days. They have been all executed. The one member of this the team of four is Ayatollah Raisi, who has been appointed 2 years ago to the head of the judiciary, and is the best chances to win the election. What I think I can say here, that I think what the regime is trying to do, they are not ashamed of anything. They don't care what people say. I don't think they care about the people. The people are suffering, no doubt about it. What can people do to not to vote? It is what they probably will be doing this time, but it's not going to secure them victory of any of the pragmatists. I would still say, with this not optimistic picture to conclude, that the ideology today is to maintain power. They will do whatever it takes to remain in power. But still, there are the young people who are the hope for the future. Few years ago, a leading Ayatollah, wrote an article in which he urged the students, demonstrating again, not to pass certain red lines and to follow through Islam. A student, whom I don't know, wrote back in the same newspaper, which were shut down a day after, a beautiful article. It said, "Father, the society is young." The society was also the name of the newspaper, Jami'eh. Pedar Jami'eh Javan asked, and he said, You urge us to follow true Islam, but would you tell us how many Islams are there? Which one of them is false and which one of them is true, and who decides? And he went to the punchline at the end. He said, the problem is not that we, the young people, are crossing certain unidentified red lines. The problem is that you, in a one-way street, you are driving against the flow of traffic. And that's the picture that I see in Iran. In the final word, long ago, 2 trains have left the terminal in Iran, in Tehran or whatever. One of them is carrying the message of change of policy, of change of regime in Iran. And one of them is carrying the message of nuclear Iran. From what I see today, the train with a nuclear message is driving faster. And this is a concern, not about what many people think only for Israel. No, Iranian nuclear weapon is the concern of the free world. If the concern of the Middle East, it's also the concern of Israel. And that's the way it should be perceived. If you think that it's only Israel, they will tell you, okay, let the Israelis take care of it. No, it is a problem. And I'll tell you why I think it's a problem. I heard President Ahmadinejad, I think it was September 2005, few weeks after his election. There is only one time a year that the Iranian president can visit New York. And this is during the General Assembly. And he came to New York, he gave his speech, went back, and then I saw a video clip of him sitting on the floor with the leading Ayatollah and sharing his experience. And he said that in the 27 minutes that I was speaking in this hall, say my colleagues told me, and I sensed it myself, there was a hell of light above my head with God's protection. People who speak like this should not be allowed to come anywhere near to the nuclear button. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start with some of the questions that we have here. And the first question is, if Iran acquires a nuclear weapon, or even if it doesn't, is it likely to take military steps to attain its express goal of wiping Israel off the map?
Well, this is a tough question. And even tougher that you turn it to professor of history. You know, we find it very difficult even to predict the past. Certainly, we are not fit to predict. And I remember when my grandmother was old and sick, and she used to complain that in our days, even the future is not what it used to be. So in the Middle East, you cannot tell what the future will be. I divide the question to 2. Are they likely to take steps? If likely to take steps mean advancing the troops in the Golan Heights, having Hezbollah to attack Israel and backing them, to take any conventional steps against Israel, yes. This nuclear umbrella will give them the chutzpah to do things that you don't want to think about. If the question is if they will take the bomb and throw it on Israel, I don't want to say no, but they know what it takes to take such a step. So maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think that we don't have to go that far. The world should do whatever it takes not to let Iran acquire nuclear weapon. They say that religiously they are forbidden to develop nuclear weapon. But you know, they said many things which were not true. So the question, if the goal is to wipe out Israel from the map, they say that they don't mean to eliminate Israel. But I think that if they will have the capabilities, they will do it. If they will do it by themselves, I don't know. But listen, see how careful they are. They are fighting their enemies with their proxies. When they saw in the Golan Heights the number of casualties from the Revolutionary Guards, they called them back home and they sent children from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from Iraq, from Lebanon, or you call them revolutionaries. But we know for sure there have been children 13, 14 years old. They were taken to the fronts. So they are very careful not to put their hands directly in such dirty things.
Great, thank you. Okay, here's another question. Do you have any indication of how, or even if, the recent COVID-19 pandemic outbreak in Iran has affected the Iranian government and its Middle East ambitions?
Well, the COVID affected Iran probably more than most of the countries in terms of casualties and sick people, devastating health services. Second, the Iranians lied to their people. And I think what Iranians are holding against the regime is the late in December, it was clear that the COVID is in Iran and they didn't share it. Why? Because many reasons, but they wanted to go through these parliamentary elections in January and have people participate or whatever. It was clear that, so I'm not, I don't want to exaggerate, but I think that they almost intentionally imported the COVID. You know how many flights of the Revolutionary Guards airline flew to these areas in China and back? So the people are very angry. They are very angry. I told you, they are educated people. When they saw that an Ukraine airplane was down in January 21, and they did not admit that they have done it. The foreign minister of Iran, in this leaked audio recently, say that they told him, tweet to all your friends that it is not done by us. And then he found out that it was done by them. You can see how many journalists decided to quit their job because of such lies. So the government itself, I say, they are not, I don't see them to change their policy. I don't see anywhere that they have changed their policy. Not in Lebanon, not in Gaza, not in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen. I don't see this affecting them. They could have done more damage probably without it, but they're doing enough with it.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is from Osgor Kayalop. Do you think the hawkish policies that have been pursued by the U.S. strengthen Iran's ruler's hand, or whatever they do, nothing can change Iran's current policies?
Here, you don't have to guess. This hawkish policy weakened the reformists, strengthened the extremists, and I don't want to blame anybody for this, but the fact is that the weakness of the pragmatists is primarily because they could not deliver. You know, people were so happy in 2015. They were so happy that the government instructed people not to be too joyful, not to show the Americans that Iran got a good deal. But that people expected, and I don't want to blame anybody. You deal with such a big issue like the JCPOA, there are difficulties. It's not easy to find a solution. For one problem was that you already limited yourself to the nuclear deal. No one spoke with the Iranians regarding their regional policy, human rights. I was in Washington in, I think, one of the ASMIA conferences. Then I met people who are involved in the administration, and I asked why not. They convinced me, when you have such a complicated case like the nuclear deal, you cannot add to the table other issues like regional policy, human rights, and other things. Let's take one step at a time. We take one step. The understanding was that you unfreeze sanctions, the money will go to the people, they will be thankful to the Americans, they will be thankful to their government, business, European business would get in, and gradually Americans will follow. This did not happen, because rather than giving the money for the needy, they used it for their adventures beyond the borders. So the end result is that, you know, when you are in the country like Iran, you cannot compete with their propaganda machinery. They explain to their people that that's because of this policy of the United States. But I honestly, myself, I don't see how this policy, you said the hawkish policy, it was hawkish policy. But then what followed? That the American president were chasing the Iranians to do the deal with him, telling them, you can get better deal with me. So we cannot, you know, put on the table all the issues. America has done very great things. America is the country that we should all thank, that there is still something close to democracy in some of the countries of the Middle East. But America is also a country that, for understandable reasons, maintains by Obama, Trump, Biden. It's not this party or another party. They want to withdraw from the Middle East. They are sick and tired from the Middle East. I can only blame ourselves, the people of the Middle East. But when you say that you want to withdraw from the Middle East, what the Saudis are thinking, what the Emiratis are thinking, what the Israelis are thinking. I would say that luckily, Israel can defend itself. One of the things that we are very proud of, that throughout the history of the State of Israel, from the first day, we never asked other soldiers to come and fight for us. That's not true for others. That's not true in Iraq. That's not true in Iraq in 91. That's not true in Afghanistan. So I can understand the Americans, but then understand the regional people in the region. You want to say, you tell them we are going out, what do you expect the Saudis do? I would not be surprised that the Saudis would sit with the Iranians. One of the major differences between the camps in Iran is to have a pro-Western orientation or pro-Eastern orientation. The reformists, pragmatists, whatever you call them, they prefer to do business with the West, also with the United States. The revolutionary guards, the extremists, their orientation is to the East. Israel is the only country that doesn't have the option to choose. Our choice is the United States. So I don't say it is a complaint. So the Iranians also don't have a choice. They must go with China. So I think that the new administration should carefully examine the situation in the Middle East, and there is no rush. I was not happy to be eager to do the deal, to conclude the deal with the Iranians before the elections. Why? Well, of course, you want to give the credit of the fixing the deal to the good guys, as you'll see them, Rouhani and Zarif, but they are going. You do the deal with Zarif, you do the deal with Rouhani, tomorrow you're stuck with the others. Whoever is the president, you will be extremist conservative. And then you know what? You told them they can always withdraw from the deal. So why to rush? In Arabic, they have two sentences in Arabic. They say conflicting things. They say al-ajala min al-shaytan. Rushing is an act of Satan. And then they say fil harake barake. In rushing, in doing things fast, there is barakah, there is bracha, there is blessing. So you have to choose where you go.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, this is a question from Professor Joseph Spurl. How central is anti-Semitism to the regime's worldview, and what are the key features of this anti-Semitism?
Well, the Iranian anti-Semitism, like Islamic anti-Semitism, owes itself to Christian Europe. The anti-Semitism is something that did not exist in this sense in the Middle East. So one origin is Western anti-Semitism. Then you have a million of other things. Jews in Islam. That's you can see that the attitude to the Jews. So I just Asaf mentioned that I'm editing about the Jews of Iran, and I'm just finishing writing an article about anti-Semitism and the denial of Holocaust in Iran. That's rooted deep into their philosophy. You know, the slogans that we heard in Iran during the Iran-Iraq war. You know, they were fighting the Iraqis, and they have one slogan is Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yahud, Jaish Muhammad Sayyahud. Khaybar is a campaign of the Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century against the Jews. And now they mention it during the war. And last month, they mentioned it in Jerusalem. Just before the day of the missile started, the demonstration, we say, they call this campaign is Khaybar. Now, people who know history of Islam, they know what it means, to eliminate the Jews. Khomeini, however, upon transition from opposition to power, he became more pragmatic. I have to be fair with the Iranians. They tried to be nice to Iranian Jewry. And the President of Iran visits synagogues in Passover, in Rosh Hashanah, in the other occasions. Jews are very faithful to the regime. There are many Jews who have been killed in the war against Iraq. They can practice their faith. The synagogues are open, but you know, they even say in the synagogues things I didn't believe they dare saying. There is, Asaf is better in synagogues than I am. There is a prayer that we in Israel use every, at least Shabbat. Other days I don't go to synagogue. I don't know if there is there. In this they pray for the souls of the victims of the IDF. Few years ago, there was a foreign television network who went to do a program on the Jews of Iran. And they were showing the promos in Israeli television about this prayer in the synagogue. And then I heard this. You know what it is for Jewish synagogue in Iran to pray for the good health of the Israeli soldiers and condolences to the victims of the war? I tried to dissuade the television to cut this, but they, on the contrary, they now know that they have something asset in hands. So nothing happened. So they go to pray, they pray the Jewish prayers, that's okay. There is a difference between their attitude to their own Jews and to the world Jewry. Because they think that all the problems of the world is because of the Jews. And no, you think that the Shah was good to the Jews, was nice to the Jews. I refer you to an interview by Mike Wallace, where he was in the CBS or which network he was, in '74. And he interviews the Shah. And the Shah complains about the Jews have too much power. And the interviewer asked him, do you really say that the Jews are having too much power? He said, yes, you don't know. Go to the banks in America, go to the media, take the New York Times, take here and there and there. So it's built in. They think that the Jews control everything. If this is for the Shah, what do you expect from Khamenei? So there are, and also, when you are a revolution, and I mean it, and it's not successful, you need to blame someone else. Who is better to blame than Israel or the Jews, or both in this sense? So I think that anti-Semitism doesn't have deep roots in society, did not have until the revolution. I lived 2 years in Iran. I never sensed anything close to anti-Semitism. Few years later, I was in leading American university, not Cornell that we mentioned earlier. And my son, who was 12 years old, came home and said that he was advised by a good friend, don't play with him because he's a dirty Jew. So I don't say that it's worse in America than this, but you think that it's new in America, it's not also in America. But in Iran, the regime is using it. It's the only country that the president of the state can go publicly and deny the Holocaust. And that day, you could run for the president of any Arab country and win. So we have here a population that was not really exposed to such ideas until the revolution. And what you want after the revolution, all the books, everything is full of anti-Semitic things. But I want to go back. This is the end of. We have other questions. I am here for you as long as you.
Well, we could go on for hours, but we do need to wrap up. We unfortunately will not be able to take any more questions, even though they are all fabulous. Perhaps we can arrange a separate Zoom call with you, but another webinar with you. But we are nearing the end.
Yes, my boss is Asaf. and you can ask him. Well, my other boss, the first one is my wife. But let me tell you a story that I heard from Iran to go back to this issue of that what you see in Iran is not necessarily what it is. The story says that an Iranian who had not been to Iran for some time comes back and wandering in the streets of Tehran, he asks his friend, tell me where I can buy cigarettes. You know, they are heavy smokers. They say, you want to buy cigarette? Let me take you to the mosque. Say, mosque to buy cigarettes? You are kidding me? So he was saying because the mosque became place for business. Said the mosque is not place for business. The place is the mosque is place for prayer. He said, well, you want place for prayer? Let me take you to Tehran University. That's the place that the Friday sermons are held every week. He said, but university is not place for prayer. If the university is place for intellectuals, you want to see the intellectuals? Let me take you to Aviv prison, where they are all sitting now. But prison is not place for intellectuals. Prison is place for criminals. You want place for criminals? Let me take you, you know where. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're sorry we didn't have more time. We really appreciate you all being here, and we hope that you will join us in future upcoming webinars. Take care, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.